It's February 8, 2019. We got more All Elite Wrestling news. And guys, trust me, you don't want to miss it today. So make sure you guys click that like button, leave a comment down below, and as always, click subscribe. Welcome back to Destination Pro Wrestling. My name is Tony. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Tango with Thango. And yes, guys, AEW on a very hot streak when it comes to the pro wrestling news. And of course, we got more news for you guys today. And it's definitely very interesting because things have been changing very rapidly in the pro wrestling world if you're not WWE. And what I mean by that is WWE is kind of doing their own thing while every other company is trying to take advantage of this so-called revolution. With that being said, guys, make sure you guys know we officially have the domain for DestinationPW.com. So we are working on a website. We got a lot of things going on. Not a dirt sheet. We're not a dirt sheet. We're bringing you guys pro wrestling news and information. We're kind of just talking to you guys about it, bringing you guys our perspective on pro wrestling. And as always, we want to hear your perspective. So make sure you guys use that comment section down below. Tell us what you guys think about today's news because it's definitely an interesting one. But guys, AEW seems to be doing some pretty big things right now. And with that, you know, whether people want to consider AEW competition for WWE, that's not really the concern here. I think we all know at this point that AEW is going to be a big alternative for WWE, and that's actually really good for the pro wrestling world. I don't understand why pro wrestling fans at this point have had to, you know, pick one or the other, right? Like if you're a fan of Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, AEW is for you. If you're a fan of entertainment and the quirky, hokey little storylines, hey, WWE's for you. And guess what, guys? Every pro wrestling company has good and bad. WWE has good, they have bad. AEW is going to have good, they're going to have bad. Impact Wrestling has good, they're going to have bad. Ring of Honor has good, and they're going to have bad. But in today's news, we're starting to learn that there might be possible working relationships for AEW. Now, we already know that there's two confirmed partnerships for AEW, which is AAA Lucha Libre as well as the OWE Oriental Wrestling Company out in China. And these are two partnerships that we know AEW has, but now we're starting to get word that there may be something under wraps. And this is what's really interesting because, as you guys know, WWE also started working with companies outside of WWE. But these are companies that aren't going to be against WWE. Now, technically, what I mean by that is OWE has its own promotion. They got to make their own money. AAA obviously doing the same. So a working relationship for AEW at this point is more than likely just for talent exchange. Obviously, you know, sharing talent, cross-promotion, that type of thing. Now, it's being said that AEW is working on a deal with MLW as well as Impact Wrestling. And this is really interesting because obviously Impact Wrestling and, you know, MLW are two pretty decently sized companies. You know, they're not huge, but they have television deals. AEW, obviously, we know they're working on their television deal. But MLW has been doing a really good job, you know, putting on their show. They're getting involved with a lot of talent outside of the United States. They're bringing them in. They're making some big signings. And on top of that, they're introducing these talent to television. MLW is one of the reasons why I even knew of Maxwell Jacob Friedman. I seen him on the indie circuit, seen him at some indie shows during WrestleMania weekend. And then sure enough, he had the opportunity to sign to MLW, which now we know MJF is going to be part of AEW. We know Pentagon and Phoenix are also with MLW, and they will also be working with AEW. MLW and AEW. We know that some of these talents that have signed to AEW obviously work for other promotions. So it's got a lot of people wondering what kind of cross-promotion there may be. And obviously this is a good time for pro wrestling, but it's also a hard time for pro wrestling. And one of the reasons why this is such a big deal is because WWE works with companies outside the United States, but they are working with these companies not in a level of where they're really exchanging talent, but kind of like a feeder system. Whereas AEW is working with companies based on sharing talent, and there's a huge difference between that. Aside from the occasional one-off appearances by WWE superstars going into Evolve, companies like Evolve and Progress pretty much work as a feeder system to WWE. That also includes ICW from, you know, the indie scene, and then that also includes WXW from Germany's indie scene. So there's a lot of companies that WWE is working with, they're not necessarily competing with. Now, in this situation, if AEW is working with MLW and Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling, and they're sharing talent between these companies, they're still technically competing against these companies. And that is because they all are being distributed through North America. And obviously, with the streaming services and things like that, they may be friendly to each other, but technically they're still two separate products. They're two separate businesses. And this is why working relationships are always interesting, because sometimes they go very well. We know Impact and Ring of Honor once worked together. Things didn't go that well. We know that New Japan at one point worked with Impact and things didn't work that well. And these things happen in the pro wrestling world and then they stop. So as much as it could be really exciting that AEW is working with talent from MLW or AAA or whatever companies are out there, as exciting as that is, one of the big issues is how this will affect both companies long term. Obviously, we don't know if AEW has any sort of contract long term with these companies, but we know that they're going to be using some talent that are signed to these companies. Now, some of these talent don't have an exclusive contract to these competitors. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. As you guys know, with Impact, they've kind of done their own thing. They've been using talent from other promotions. And then obviously, they're just, it's very like they don't own these rights. They don't own these characters. And that's something that WWE has kind of done a really good job with for the most part, because AEW owns the gimmick. They own the copyrights. They own the character. And AEW, as of right now, they're bringing in indie stars. And I get it, guys. Like, that's kind of what they are. But at this point, with AEW and the talent they've signed, it's almost like they're a glorified indie company. And until we know about their TV deal 1,000%, that's all they are. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with having another alternative to WWE. Fans keep talking about, hey, you got to pick one or the other. It doesn't matter, I personally like the idea of an exclusive contract, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to give you the edge over other companies. But in 2019, the talent pool is not that big. WWE has a lot of talent locked up, and there's a lot of talent that are being screwed over by Lucha Underground. So because the talent pool is very selective, there's not enough talent to go around everybody, and that's why I could see this being a very, very interesting deal for AEW. Now, of course, one thing that I'm absolutely loving in the pro wrestling world, and I want to bring this up, there's been conversations that I've had with people that have told me, hey, don't be surprised if we see NWA get involved with AEW. And that to me is really exciting, because it's pure speculation at this point, but we know that AEW is working with other companies. We know that the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship belt was defended at All In. This is a sweet situation for pro wrestling, having Billy Corgan possibly have that title belt being defended in AEW. And obviously the history is there because Cody Rhodes and his father, that's the beauty. So we had this conversation. It was pure speculation, but at this point, if AEW is going to work with companies that have an established roster, and these companies are the ROH, the MLW, PPW, AIW, AAW, Impact, whatever it may be, if they're working with all these companies and they're getting talent from these little pools, right, then why not work with a company like NWA, whose real value is the title belt and the history? And I'm not saying this is going to be a situation where it's NWA presents AEW, but some sort of cross promotion at this point would make sense. Again, I would prefer my superstars to be exclusively signed to All Elite Wrestling, but I can understand why that's not the situation here. And I can understand, right now, when time goes on, maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe AEW is working with these guys until the contract situations get figured out. But I think this is a win-win situation. As much as I don't agree with it entirely, it does help AEW, and it's going to help some of these other companies who start to take a little bit from that momentum that comes from All Elite Wrestling. Now, with all of that being said, if AEW cannot develop these talents to become their own, right? If these guys are considered MLW talents and they're considered Impact Wrestling guys, and AEW cannot get these guys to become AEW stars, then it's not going to be good for them. And why that actually is a big deal is because WWE has signed so much talent that have a big name that they almost forget to develop their own stars. And if you can't make these WWE guys WWE guys, then they're always going to be synonymous with the promotion they came from. And that's a perfect example. Guys like AJ, Samoa Joe, until WWE does something really special with them, they were always known as guys that came from another promotion, and that was that. So, very interesting time period, guys. But MLW, ROH, Impact Wrestling, 3 of the companies expected to possibly work with AEW. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Sharing talent could be a good thing. I may not agree with it, but I could see the benefits, and I could see the part of where it may not work out in their favor, but it's definitely interesting. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. My name is Tony from DestinationPW.com, and I'll see you guys soon.
You have reached your destination.